So I'm a systems engineer as well as have communication background. So I'm going to go big picture on you guys here, so bear with me. But to make systems change, these are the things we were talking about. What are the policies that we need to engage? What are the practices we need to engage? And resource flows are things like, where does the money go? So how do we bring economics to bear? How do we bring granting systems and taxpayer incentive programs? How do we bring all that to bear? We build relationships here at meetings like this and all the other places we collaborate. And power dynamics is about, are we listening to all the people in the conversation in equitable ways? And then the piece that we're all kind of hung up on is, so what they call mental models is how do we change how we think about the problem? And so in order to get to that, one of the quotes that's often said in this is that there's no systems change unless you have individual change. And so this is, to me, kind of the summary of the engagement part that we've talked about. And we've hit around, do we do regulation? Do we do more education? And it's yes to all of those things. And so without spending a ton of time walking through this, because that's another presentation and this is supposed to be brief, we've got regulation way up here. We move down to what are, so we can do positive or negative on either of these. Are there, how do we bring our economic systems to bear? Peer pressure, which is even, like getting the students engaged, or it's a TAPS program where people have friendly competitions. And then down here, this is our education piece. This is where we hope all of us get to, is that we all, and those we're working with, really want to get at solving this problem. And so, there's many ways to move people along that. But we all have to work together. So these, hopefully it's big enough you can read it in the back. But this is how we all start working in the same direction. So we've all got our own responsibilities, but on that previous slide, all of us kind of work in different spaces here. Some of us are in education, some of us are regulatory agencies, some of us work in the private sector in economics. And so how do we all come together and move in a similar direction? So there's this process called collective impact, or I like collaborative impact, same things. But basically what you're trying to get after is, can we set a common goal? So, it's maybe a little more specific, but can we bring our nitrates to some target? Or can we set a goal that we can all agree upon? And then how do we measure? I mean, we got tons of data and good stuff. So I think we've got those pieces in place, but how do we measure success? Particularly on the people side, I think this is where measurement will come into place. Then how do we make sure our activities reinforce each other? So we all might be doing different educational activities and all of that, but we need mutually reinforcing activities to move us towards that common goal, so that it becomes very clear. So when you get to public engagement, this is what we're after and this is how we're doing it. And that takes communication. We have many great venues where this communication takes place, but how do we be intentional about that? And then what is the organization in the background of, how do we structure ourselves so that we can achieve all this? So Katie Pekarik and myself were asked last fall, I guess it was, to take on leadership kind of our statewide nitrate group. We had a small group of extension educators, which is where this started. Sorry, for those of you who don't know Katie, she's an extension specialist based out of the School of Natural Resources, and she's our statewide water quality extension specialist, as well as a liaison with NDEE. And so she and I are cohorts in this big plan. And so what we did was we got our faculty together and said, who wants to join us in talking about this? We're like, maybe 20, 30 people show up. We had 50 show up in person, and about 80 have said, yes, I want to figure out how do we move the needle on this thing. We've been talking about it for decades. Let's, get re-engaged, reinvigorated. And so we represent a very nice, diverse group. And so we're structuring internally this way because it's the same thing. Sometimes because we are independent contractors, as Ron said, we can be like 100 bouncy balls in a room. So how do we kind of bounce in a similar direction, at least? So this is our attempt internally on campus. And then what we're planning to do, both of us have been involved quite a bit, so this is really blurry. So I can send you the specifics, and you wouldn't be able to read it. But this is a map I created of everybody, all the entities and projects currently engaged in Brazil. And one of the things talking to people, they're like, why are we doing all of this in this one small place when we've got this huge statewide challenge? And our thought is if we can bring everything to bear in one place, try it all, and evaluate it in some way that we can say, okay, this is what's essential to move the needle. This is what was helpful, and these things didn't really work. So that then this can become replicatable without spending this represents millions of dollars. For those of you who are involved know it. How do we do this in a way so that it becomes something that can be repeated both here in Nebraska, and then we can continue to be the leaders in this water management and share this model broadly across the United States and across the world through our Global Institute, because we're not the only ones trying to tackle this, but we can be the leaders. We have 80 faculty. We have an NRD system. This is something that we should be able to raise the flag and say Nebraska is the leader in figuring out how to do this. So towards that effort, I'll wrap up to say, our next steps, we want to definitely get some takeaways and summary of the conversations here. And then I think we're shooting for January. We will be gathering a statewide stakeholder group representing, people from all of these sectors to say, can we come to an agreement on that goal? And then what are the next steps? So we anticipate breaking out into some working groups, some of the big topics that came up during the conference. We want to say, here are some pieces it looks like we need groups to get together around. And so stay tuned for this winter. We're planning to move into having some action based on these things that have been growing with time. So with that, I'll wrap up and let our wonderful panel give you some other takeaways from the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crystal.